So I think one of the most overlooked opportunities for leveraging business as a probate-focused real estate agent, and I think also probate-focused attorneys, is with a title company. And there are different people who you interface with at the title company, different positions, different titles. But Sharon Yarber at Chicago Titles had several of those positions and is an asset to anybody's real estate business and probate business in particular. So Sharon, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, and it's Friday, and my weeks just fly every day as a new adventure, new deals.
So tell me, what is your position with Chicago Title, and which is one of the, if you don't know, one of the leading title companies, one of the older title companies in the business. I know when I started in the business in 1986, they were the leading in my little market area, and I've worked with them on and off of those times. Tell me about your position with Chicago Title. What do you do on a daily basis?
I am a national account manager, so I'm involved with basically sales, business development. I do have 40 years of experience as an underwriting counsel, senior underwriting counsel. I am an attorney, and so that brings just an extra level of expertise and sophistication to helping clients in a transaction. I'm not just a salesperson that you think of who, comes around with pens and coffee cups and really doesn't add any value. So the value that I bring is, one, of course, my knowledge and experience as an attorney and as an underwriting counsel. But basically the role of the rep in the transaction, which is your first point of contact. If you're doing a transaction and you want to open up a transaction with a title company, you call me as if I'm your rep. And I then pick the team, and I'm basically the quarterback. I make sure that the product, the commitment, or the preliminary report gets out. I check it to see if there appear to be any errors, or does it appear to be correct? They've searched the right property. It's what we are expecting. I will go over the exceptions. And if there's something that I think should be deleted based on perhaps a termination document or a reconveyance, and I look at the documents, I can work with my title officer to get the title report cleaned up before it even, gets distributed too widely amongst the customer group. And then, as issues come up, people call me because they know I am going to know how to address any issue or question that comes up. If I'm unavailable, of course, you can always call the escrow officer or the title officer to address issues. And then, but I pick the team, and I make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and delivering the service that I require from my customers.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think because you're experienced, I don't want to say you take it for granted, but I think people listening to this may not fully understand the value creation. So let me go back a little bit.
Sure.
When I started the business, title reps were primarily came to your office, brought you pens, brought you coffee cups, or coffee koozies, or schedules for the Dodger baseball game. And my brother and I used to have a joke. We called them our best friends. And the value was almost entirely the relationship. And there was a time when they used marketing, and they take you to lunch, or they would pay marketing for the office. And I think changes in the law have eliminated a lot of that. But the company is still in a competitive business, and it seems to me the point of differentiation should be on the value of the service you bring to the transaction. If you can bring more service, that means I'm going to get paid faster, sooner, more consistently, and that's the value that you bring in as with your experience and knowledge of the business.
I would completely agree. Yes, I mean, as you know, I can't even buy you a cup of coffee. In
California. I have my own coffee. I tell people that I don't need you to buy me coffee. I'm very particular about my own coffee. Get my deal done and help me get the next deal.
I know. Well, it used to be, you would take customers to basketball games or, out to dinner or whatever. Yeah. And really having a personal relationship with a customer has value. But in this business, at the end of the day, you're working on a deal. You don't get paid unless the deal closes. If there are issues, they have to be addressed. And the service that we provide is what hopefully differentiates us from our competitors.
So one of the things I find interesting about you, I met you because you are on a panel with one of my favorite attorneys, Mina Sirkin, who's a probate litigation attorney.
Right.
And so for her business is all probate, and specifically probate litigation versus administration, which your husband does. And when I saw you on the panel, I called you, reached out, and you kind of said to me, well, I'm not really a probate focus. It's I think it's the Bar Association real estate group, not the probate group.
It's the title insurance subsection of the LA County Bar Real Property section that is putting on the program that Nina and I are on.
And so it's interesting because I caught myself, because I tell people all the time, don't think of it as a probate problem, think of it as a title problem. Probate is the solution.
That's correct. I mean, so, you know, I don't know if you're going to attend our program. There's a lot to address with respect to title and how things get resolved in probate. But there are issues of, you know, competency. There may be a will, there may be a trust, but was undue influence exercised by somebody? Was there fraud? Is there a forgery? So there's the will legitimate. I think it was Aretha Franklin who passed away, I think last year. And I think it was Aretha Franklin. But anyway, I guess she had several wills, and they finally found her most recent will was stuffed in her sofa in her living room. You know, so was that really the will? I mean, you have will contests. You know, you have a housekeeper who has taken care of somebody in the last, you know, months or years of their life, and all of a sudden they change their will and they leave, you know, their whole estate or at least the house, you know, to that person, and the kids get squeezed out. And so litigation over all of those issues is what Mina does, and that's what happens in probate. And, you know, we as a title insurer are not going to be able to resolve those disputes. They get resolved in court. And then once you have a final court order that determines, you know, the will was or wasn't legitimate, it's intestate succession or what have you, and they finally determine who owns the property, then we can insure and go forward.
For reference, the event that we're talking about is actually next week on Tuesday. The LA County Bar Association, Handling Real Property Interests of Deceased Persons. And I saw this is scheduled for Tuesday, March 12th. You can register here. Whether or not you're a member, I am a member, there's a discount, but if you're not, that's fine too. And it just, I saw this description, and I said, oh, Mina Sirkin, I love Mina. She's been on my Probate Weekly show. And I saw Sharon Yarber. Sure, I don't know her now. I'm not going to call the judge. I know the judge. I don't know the judge. I'm not going to get. The last thing I'm going to do is do anything that's going to upset the judge. But I saw Sharon, and that was what caused me to call. But if you're interested in learning about handling real property interests of deceased parties, that will be on Tuesday, March 12th, or reach out to me. More glad to get you the information on that. So, and I think, you know, on one hand, I think what you said was correct in that there's a problem, and sometimes we have to fix it in probate court. Sometimes you're able to fix the problem by getting the right documents together. There may be a death cert or a trust certification or some other information along the way. And so that's really where uniquely you come into play, which is rather than just being my best friend or, you know, nothing wrong with having best friends, but based on your experience as a title, you know, reviewing title packages, legal training, you can look at this and say, well, maybe there is a way we can solve the problem with this additional document.
Sure. I mean, the first thing that you do when you as the broker are approached about handling a piece of property, what is the first thing you do? Mm-hmm. Do you ask for a property profile? Do you get a preliminary report? What do you do? One of the things I'm going to be discussing in the program on Tuesday is that you as the agent should always order a preliminary report.
Yes.
Or a commitment.
Yes.
Not just rely on a property profile, because a property profile is a free product. You get what you pay for, and what you will get is the last deed that was recorded in the chain of against the property. And I don't want to say in the chain of title because that's a word of art. Title companies do keep records, and they post them in a chain of title format, but they post things against the legal description of the property. And so there is a concept that you may be familiar with of a wild deed. It would be a deed that is not legally in the chain of title, and it doesn't give constructive notice to anybody, but the title company will pick it up and report it. Now you have actual knowledge of the existence of this document. So for example, somebody is in title. Let's say you are entitled to a piece of property. You buy the property, you own it. And the next thing you know is I record a deed describing that property, conveying it to my brother. That deed is not in the chain of title. But if you get a property profile, the deed from me to my brother is going to be the last deed that was recorded against that property that's going to be reported to you. And yet that's not who's coming to you as the customer. My brother, he hasn't come to you. So you need to find out who's the true owner of the property. So the title insurer is going to go back, invest in the last insured party who's in the chain of title and has a good deed. And then they will report out the effect of this deed from Sharon to her brother. Like, who the heck is she? What interest does she have in the property? Now, it may be that you actually gave a deed to me and I forgot to record it. And I really was the owner of the property because the deed is valid as between the two of us. But this is why you want to get really good title information, and you're going to get that in the report. And then you're going to figure out, now what do I do? You know.
So use a term, and I'm going to educate you a little bit. There's the proper legal term wild deed, which you properly use, describes a deed that doesn't have a sequence to it and stands out. Then this wild deed, there's realtors who come across, which is the guy was dying, he had a caregiver, she became the girlfriend, and she got a deed signed by him on the deathbed, and that's one wild deed.
In the non-legal sense.
Right. Now, it might also be a wild deed legally, but man, the nerve of this lady to pull this thing off, and it's just amazing how. And then I have one I just had recently where literally it was a wild deed, but not only was it wild, the date of the transfer signed by the customer at the consulate in Mexico was after his date of death. Like, he died in 2022, and the deed was dated 2023. Well, obviously, they just didn't know, and they guessed, and they wrote the deed. That's a wild deed, right? That's a real wild deed.
Yeah, I've actually seen that too, where something was signed by somebody. This is why I hate DocuSign. It's very convenient, but it's an opportunity for the disaster. This gentleman had DocuSigned a document while he was alive. And then there was some modification or something. I don't remember all of the details now, but that needed to be re-executed. And his son was supposedly executing it, but it came up with the dad's signature on DocuSign, and he was already dead. So how do you sign something when you're already deceased? So obviously that document wasn't any good.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, we get some wild and crazy stories in our business.
You get some legal wild deeds, and you get some wild deeds, and that's
did you know there's something known as a confidential marriage? I worked with a gentleman who was a title officer, and his father was elderly, got a caregiver. The caregiver went with him to the doctor and did all the talking because the father was really gone, even though he was still marginally alive. And then they got married, and they had a confidential marriage. So you couldn't get a copy of the marriage certificate. They were allegedly married. And then, of course, she got him to leave the house to her, and she changed all the locks and kept the kids, from seeing the dad. And the whole thing was just a complete nightmare. I never even knew there was such a thing. So learn something every day.
Wow, I've been married 38 years. It's not confidential. So just for the record, be careful I say she's in the next room. So, well, let's talk a little bit about a relationship with you. I know that Chicago Title has great services to help real estate agents and investors build their business. Obviously, you can't pay for things and there's limits, but you guys do have a product that helps us do the research, the preliminary documents, the preliminary research on a property. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Are you talking about a property profile?
Well, obviously, I could call you or text you and say, or email you and say, can I get a property profile? But you also offer an app, I think, to customers, not to everybody, but to people that you work with, that allows them to go online and research properties and properties and such?
Yes, I have not used that because that is a tool that is largely used by residential agents. And historically, I have worked in commercial, industrial real estate transactions rather than residential, which is why I don't have a huge amount of hands-on experience with probate transactions, because you just don't have those in commercial. But there is.
I will say there are occasional. There are some, and frankly, those agents don't know what they're doing at all, even less than residential. And by the way, air forms do not accommodate probate at all. So just FYI, I understand that commercial agents kind of look down on the CAR forms as being inadequate, but the AIR forms, there's no probate addendum, there's no probate. This is in the actual purchase contract. This is not a probate transaction, and there's no protection for the buyer or seller for any of the things that can happen uniquely in probate that we in residential transactions do offer our customers, just for what that's worth.
Those provisions can be stricken, and you can do a separate addendum if the parties agree to it. Because obviously, if you're doing a sale through probate and you have to get probate court approval of the sale, you're going to have to address that in your contract. It says you can't ignore it. But yes, you know, we can provide a property profile. We can give access to customers to this program. I can't even think at the moment what it's called.
24/7.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I use it all the time.
Whatever. Okay. And it allows you to, you know, in the 3 o'clock in the morning, you get, you know, an urge to find out, you know, who owns a particular piece of property. You can get certain title information with, you know, you doing the work yourself.
And I think that's the case. You guys have the product in it, and it's really helpful. You probably just give it to the customers like me, and we use it. And I like it because I hate keeping to ask my rep for run-of-the-mill documents and research. I'm on the phone and I'm looking at documents all day long, so it's a great tool as well.
Yeah.
So you obviously been in this business like I have a while, and you've seen people who, you know, the market's changed. I think you could say it's gotten more competitive. I don't know, it's gotten worse or better. It depends on who you are and how you reply to things. But what do you see consistently among the real estate agents that have thrived and grown during this last couple year period where others have been struggling?
You know, my mother was a real estate agent and a broker. And when she started in the business, interest rates were 18%. And she went to the office and nobody had sold anything in months and months and months. The market was really bad. My mother was optimistic and she was a great closer. The first month in the business, she sold 11 houses.
Wow.
In an 18% market.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
And people were like, oh, she must be so pushy. You know, they were putting her down. But at the end of the day, I have seen there's always, you know, there are always the top agents, and they've always been successful regardless of the economy, regardless of the market. And it's usually like 1% to 2% of the agents, and everybody else, you know, produces something once in a blue moon, and it's usually a friend or a relative or something. So I think it's just that the tenacity, the constantly staying in touch with your customers, constantly staying informed about the market so that you can price properties appropriately, give guidance on, you know, financing, know the different lenders and who's got the best deals. It's just being really informed and having that knowledge about the market to bring to bear to help your customers. Because if, you know, if a property used to be worth $3 million and now it's worth $2 million, and you're asked to list it for $3 million, you've got to be able to explain to your customer why it's really only worth $2 million, because the market has changed, rather than list it at $3 million and then it sits there and it becomes a white elephant, which is the worst thing you can have, which is a listing that just sits there and doesn't sell, because then nobody, you've created a reputation now of being, you know, a jerk yourself as the agent. You don't know what's going on, or you have a very difficult, unrealistic seller. And agents don't want to show a property to their customer when they think the seller is just being ridiculous and they're wasting their time. So it's all of those things, I think.
Okay. Well, look, Sharon, I do appreciate working with you and the knowledge, and I appreciate your time with us today. I really look forward to seeing you and Mina at the LA County Bar Association event next week on Tuesday the 12th at 12:30. If you're interested, I'll put in the description as well a link to that program. And Sharon, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Great to meet you, and thank you for your time today. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.